I summoned you, please come to me. Don't bury thoughts that you really want. I fill you up, drink from my cup. Within me lies what you really want.
I don't have time for such trivial matters, Vayan.
No more fights to pick up the pieces. I left you with the parts of me I don't.
And you are not known as Choi Vayan, the mob boss daughter. Bodyguards are unnecessary, so don't need to take any bodyguards with you. He said coldly, but her eyes shined with some unknown spark. So there won't be a bunch of men following me. You are not a target of anyone that you need protection anyways. Barely anyone has ever seen your face, I believe. And one more thing. You are going there as Vayan, Miss Kim Vayan, not Mrs. So don't you dare use my name in front of anyone. Don't you dare take advantage of my name. I never intended to do so, Taehyung. I will crave my own path there, not by any leverage. Aren't you getting late now? Eat your meal and leave for your interview. He stated and got up. He took his coat and his bodyguards followed him. While heading towards his car, Taehyung said to his bodyguard while wearing his sunglasses, "Don't ever let anyone, especially Vine, suspect that there is a bunch of undercover bodyguards there in her university to protect her." "Yes, boss, we won't let you disappoint." Taehyung's bodyguard opened the car door for him and he got in and left for his work. Vine stood before the towering gates of the university, her heart a fluttering bird trapped within her ribcage. She clutched the strap on her back tightly. Vine drew a deep breath, the air tasting of possibilities and the faintest hint of freedom. She walked through the gates, her steps uncertain but determined. Her spirit The interview panel was a trio of esteemed professors, their faces etched with the lines of wisdom and the shadows of academia. Mathematics to me is the language of the universe. It's the rhythm that dances in the space between atoms. Her shyness suffered a blush coloring her cheeks. I believe that every challenge is an opportunity to learn, to grow. I will meet them with patience and perseverance, just as I have met every obstacle in my life. As she left the university, her heart was light, her steps sure. She had faced her fears, stood on her own, and no matter the outcome, she had. Vain's heart was aflutter with a joy as she approached Taehyung's study. The news of a successful interview was a bright flame within her, eager to escape in the burst of shared happiness. She neither did think about her surroundings nor about the time. She burst into Taehyung's study, excited and happiness dripping from her voice. Taehyung, they loved me. The professor, they said, what the hell? Her words shattered against the cold atmosphere of the room like a delicate glass against stone. Taehyung sat behind his desk, his expression darkening like a storm cloud over a clear sky. Beside him stood a man with a presence like a knife's edge, sharp and dangerous, his eyes fixed on Vain with a predatory interest. Taehyung rolled, his voice was whip crack, shivering her joy with precision. What do you think you are doing, bursting in like this? Guards? Why the hell no one stopped her? Vain recoiled as if struck, her joy bleeding away, leaving her pale and shaken. She had never seen Taehyung like this, his anger a palpable force that filled the room with dread. Her voice was tremblingly, her timidity wrapping around her like a shroud. I'm sorry, I didn't know you had a company. I was just happy. The man beside Taehyung chuckled, a sound devoid of humor, his eyes raking over Vain with a disdain that felt like a physical touch. Who's this, Kim? She looks ravishing. Taehyung's jaw clenched, and for a moment Vain saw a flash of something in his eyes. Was it embarrassment, anger, protection? She couldn't tell. She's just a maid's daughter. Yeah, a maid's daughter. Nothing more. Gritting his teeth, Taehyung said those words which pierced Vain's heart into a million pieces. Her eyes welled up. A maid's daughter. Her lips trembled as a whisper-like voice left her mouth. Can I? No, her mother won't sell her. Angrily saying this while looking dangerously into the man's eyes, he shifted his gaze at Vain. She shivered looking at his eyes. What the hell you are still doing here, huh? Leave, damn it! Vain didn't need to be told twice. She fled the room, her heart heavy, her cheeks burning with shame. The corridor seemed to stretch on forever as she made her way back to her own room, the echo of her footsteps a lonely cadence. Running into her room, Vain sat on the bed and gripped the bedsheets tightly. Tears were flowing from her eyes as her husband's harsh words were still echoing in her mind. What the hell are you doing here, huh? Leave, damn it! As she sat on the edge of her bed, the tears that she held at bay began to cascade down her cheeks, each one a silent testament to the pain she was feeling that time. The sound of the door slamming open jolted her from her sorrowful reverie. Taehyung stood there, his presence dominating the space as he glared at her with fury in his eyes. His voice, when he spoke, was a Vain, how freaking dare you come to my study to interrupt me in front of my guest? You overstepped your boundaries. Who freaking gave you the rights to go there? I didn't mean to. I was just happy about the interview, and she whispered, your damn happiness does not give you the right to barge into my affairs. You are my wife, a liability to me. Remember your place. If you are feeling happiness, then freaking celebrate it alone. Don't need to show your freaking face around my study place. Understand? You freaking better understand this. With those final words, he turned on his heels and left, the door slamming shut behind him with a finality that felt like a verdict. Vain was left alone, her spirit as battered as her heart. The room felt colder now, the shadows longer. As the initial shock faded, a fire began to kindle within her. Taehyung's words meant to belittle her, only served to indicate a determination she had known she possessed. Vain wiped her tears, her resolve hardening. She would no longer seek Taehyung's approval or validation. She was her own person, with her own dreams and aspirations. If he didn't want to be a part of her happiness, then be it. She wouldn't go to him until he tell her so. The door to Taehyung's master bedroom slammed open with a force that echoed through the silent halls to the expensive house. His breath was raged, his chest heaving with a turbulent storm of emotions that raged within him. Anger, frustration, and a deep-seated self-loathing drove him to lash out at the world around him. Taehyung shouted, his voice a roar that filled the room. Damn it all. With a sweep of his arm, he sent a cascade of papers flying from his desk, the inklings shattering against the wall, leaving a dark stain like a shadow. Photographs, mementos of a life he was both bound to and repelled by, crashed to the floor, their glasses frames splitting into 1,000 pieces. He continued his rampage, overturning chairs, throwing books. Each item destroyed a surrogate for the pain he was feeling that time. Finally, spent and breathless, Taehyung collapsed against the wall. Sliding down to the floor, his head fell into his hands, and for a moment he allowed himself to be vulnerable, to feel the weight of his own despair. Why the hell can't I escape this? The silence that followed was suffocating, and in its depths, the ghost of his past rose to torment him. He saw his adoptive father, a towering figure of authority and fear. His voice, a thunderous bellow that reduced his adoptive mother's tears. And Hannah, where the hell is my dinner? I expect it to be ready when I came home. It's almost ready, dear. Just a few more minutes. But Mr. Song was not a man known for his patience. He stormed into the kitchen, his eyes immediately falling on the slightly overcooked rice. This rice is overcooked. Can't you do anything right? You are useless, Hannah. He not only raised his voice but also raised his hand on her. I will make it again. Lowering her gaze while placing her palm over her stinging left cheek, she mumbled. Make it again and waste more food. You are not only important but wasteful too. You good for nothing hole. The harshness in his voice was like a physical blow, and Mrs. Song flinched with every word. She nodded meekly, her sprite crushed under the weight of her husband's contempt. You should be freaking grateful I even keep you around. What use is a wife who can't cook, can't read, can't do anything right? Saying this, he started to remove his belt, making Mrs. Kemp shivered in fear. In the corner of the room, young Taehyung watched, his small body tense with the urge to protect his mother. He knew better than to speak up. His father's worth was something he had learned to fear from a very young age. Taehyung growled, feeling the weight of his past too much unbearable. Couple of days later. Wayne's first day as a math professor at the university was filled with anticipation. As she prepared her materials in the faculty lounge, a friendly voice greeted her. Hello, you must be the new addition to our math department, said a man with a warm smile, extending his hand. I am Park Jimin, one of the maths professor here. Wayne shook his hand, feeling the kindness in his gesture. Yes, I am Kim Wagon. It's nice to meet you, Professor Park, she replied, her nervousness easing slightly. Please, just Jimin is fine. We are all colleagues here. And don't worry, the students are great. You will fit right in. Thank you, Jimin. Wayne said, a smile forming on her lips. I hope so. I'm looking forward to contributing to the department. In case you have any questions or if you just want to discuss the math, you can call me. At evening, the evening shadows stretched across the living room as Taehyung stood by the window, his gaze fixed on the street below. He had been waiting for a certain someone to return from her first day at university, though he would never admit it. The sound of the keys jingling at the door signaled her arrival. Taehyung turned away from the window, paging innocence as he picked up a book from the coffee table. Ryan stepped inside, her eyes scanning the room, branding on Taehyung. "You are home," she said, a note of surprise in her voice. Taehyung's response was measured, his voice low yet carrying the weight of his presence. "I just arrived. How was your day?" Ryan hesitated, caught off guard by his inquiry. After the study incident, it's the first time he talked to her. She removed her coat, placing it carefully on her hand. She said, "It was good. The faculty was welcoming and the students seemed eager to learn." Taehyung nodded, his expression unreadable. "Good," he said simply, his tone still calm and dominating, yet there was a hint of something else, perhaps curiosity or a sense of genuine interest. Ryan felt a small sense of accomplishment, knowing her new role was something she had achieved on her own, and for a brief moment she allowed herself to believe that Taehyung too might see in her new life. Ryan took a deep breath, the warmth of the room a stark contrast to the chill she had just felt outside. The day was full of introductions and first impressions. "I met the other professors and they were all quite supportive. The students were curious and engaged." She paused, a smile tugging at the corner of her mouth as she remembered one interaction in particular. "There's another math professor, Park Jimin. He was particularly welcoming. He even shared some advice on how to connect with the students and offered his help if I ever needed it." Taehyung's expression remained impassive, but his eyes narrowed slightly at the mention of Jimin. Ryan, oblivious to the change, continued to recount her tale, her enthusiasm growing as she spoke of the small victories and challenges she had faced. "And there was this moment in the faculty lounge," she said, her hands gesturing immediately. "Jimin helped me with the projector and we ended up discussing different teaching methods. It was nice." She finished her tale and she looked up at Taehyung, searching for a sign of approval or interest. Instead, she was met with a cold gaze. "Did I ask you to narrate everything in such detail?" Taehyung's voice was harsh, cutting through the warmth of her words like a knife. Without another word, he turned on his heel and left the room, leaving Faye standing alone, the joy of her day evaporating in the wake of his dismal. "Why do you still get excited seeing his little kindness, Ryan? After all these months, you should know your place in his life. Don't overstep it." To be continued.